Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist congregation of Terre, Haute. This congregation welcomes all people, regardless of their age, religion, race, nationality, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or anything else that has been used to divide people. We are a group of people with our own opinions, our own ideas, our own dreams. But we share ideals. We share a common belief in a liberal religion. In our discussions, we may disagree with each other, but we must always remember that what unites us is stronger than what separates us. We must always end the service aware of the love that we have for each other.
Today, in Being You, we celebrate the second principle. On Easter Sunday, we remember the teachings of Jesus as we celebrate the miracle of life, which is also closely related to the mystery of death. Jesus, for example, spoke of a seed. Unless it falls to the earth and is buried, it remains just a seed. But by going down beneath the ground, it gives rise to new life and bears much fruit. I have a handful of seeds this morning, and I invite the children to take one. Take it home and plant it in a pot or in a sunny space in the garden. Water it every day or two, and in a short time you'll see some magic happen. It's the magic we call spring. Part of the magic is in the seed, which is alive, full of DNA and stored up nutrients that help it grow. But another part of the magic is in the soil, which is made up of old leaves and twigs and little creatures that have composted and decayed to make a bed where the seed can lie quietly and take root. It takes both to make spring happen: the light and warmth and clarity of the sun and the cool, damp dimness down underneath the earth. It takes the wonder of life, and it also takes the wonder of death. And people are like that seed, Jesus said. Sometimes we have to lose ourselves to find ourselves. Sometimes we have to make an ending in order to find a new beginning. So I ask you on this Easter morning, if there's a part of you that needs to put to rest. A grudge, perhaps, you need to bury. An emotion or a memory you need to plow beneath the soil. A piece of identity or self-image that you need to drop or scatter to the wind. Is there a door you need to close so that another passage can be opened? If you're wise, like the seed, you won't be afraid of the dark. You'll know that that's the place where transformation takes place. And if you're wise, like the autumn leaf or like the bloom that's faded, you won't be afraid to fall when your time comes. You will know that's the gateway to a new and different life. These are the words of Gary Kowalski, who is a Unitarian Universalist minister and author of many books. Today's opening words were chosen by Bill Breeden. If you don't stop laughing when you grow old, you will grow old when you stop laughing. George Bernard Shaw. And our opening hymn, number 269.
At the south
today's transitional words, laughter serves as the blocking agent. Like a bulletproof vest, it may help protect you against the ravages of negative emotions that can assault you in disease. Mormon cousins. Today our program is delivered by Reverend Bill Breeden, and he will present his program entitled Easter is a Good Time to Laugh, Reflections on Life and Good Memories.
One of the things that strikes me, having done memorial services and funerals for nigh on to 50 years now, is that I've never been to one yet that did not include in the whole process a lot of laughter. You ever notice that? You go to a funeral or a memorial service, a celebration of life, and during the service itself you have time to grieve and weep and so forth. But sit around for an hour or so with the family, with friends, and you find yourself laughing, a lot of laughing. In fact, I've heard people stop and say, should we be laughing this much, especially in the presence of a dead body? But you do. You actually do. And I mentioned this book before, and I know some of you have gotten this book, One Long River of Song by Brian Doyle. Anything by Brian Doyle is wonderful. Even his most Catholic of books. He is a confessing Catholic, or was. He died a few years ago. Used to be editor of the Portland Magazine, and one of the finest wordsmiths of the English language I've ever found. He tells a story in here called The Lair, in which a man made the most stunning speech he had ever heard. And it was not taped, it was not delivered from a text, there was no record of it except in the stunned hearts of the 50 people who heard it. And he said, I've thought about this story every day since I heard it. The man who delivered it was a devout Buddhist, and in recent years he had traveled from his home in America to Auschwitz and Birkenau, the death camps in Poland. And in those dark scars on the earth, 2 million people were roasted because they were Jewish. People from all over the world now go to these camps to pray. And this man went to those camps and stayed there in the camps for 2 weeks of praying and silent contemplation as a Buddhist. And one night, he said, at Auschwitz, we were all gathered together in one room, more than 100 of us, he said, when a rabbi reached us with both hands and grasped the hands of the people next to him, and they all held hands, and in the hands they began to sway a little, and before long they started dancing and laughing, and he said it was the greatest experience of joy he had ever had in his life. And some people were horrified that a person could dance and laugh. The Jewish rabbi started it off in a death camp. And he said, how could there be dancing? He said, I don't really know. Help me find an answer. When we came down from a tree 60 million years ago, he said, we were naked and slow and weak, and to survive we evolved superb brains and a great ferocity and an endless thirst for killing, and that is why we kill everything, including each other. We are capable of unspeakable evil, every one of us. The Nazis are in us. No one can be at Auschwitz and not feel twitching in himself. It's a place where arguments end. But, he said, what if our moral evolution sped up now as fast as our physical and intellectual evolution has? What if this is happening to many of us already? What if evolution sometimes feels like reasonless joy? What might our world become if this is so? That speaker he was speaking about was Peter Matheson. And if you've not read anything by Peter Matheson, I highly recommend it. He wrote Snow Leopard, At Play in the Fields of the Lord, and many other books. A wonderful writer, now deceased. He was a Buddhist. So I got to thinking about, surely on that first Easter morning, and even on Friday night, after the killing was over, the family, friends get together. Surely there was laughter, even in the midst of a terrible, terrible event. And I want to say about those who believe in the bodily resurrection of Jesus, who believe all the Christian doctrines really, I have no complaints against them if that belief makes them better human beings. And I've been in jails and I've been in prison with several confessing Christians of all denominations almost, working for social justice, and I respect their faith immensely, as they respect my lack of faith in theirs as a literal understanding. So anyway, I wanted to say that Easter's a great time to laugh. I mean, when you walk out in a day like this, how can you help but not laugh? My dog going nuts, chasing squirrels, around flowers blooming, you just have to laugh. And so what I've done this morning, and I got this idea really, I've been wanting to do it for a long time. I attended a UU Summer Assembly up in Lake Geneva years ago, and there was a minister up there who liked to show his favorite cartoons of the year. And I thought it was a great show every year. Every time I saw it, I was up there a couple of times. And so I collect cartoons that I like, and I brought some with me today, and we're going to go through them, and I'll stop occasionally and comment, or maybe more than occasionally perhaps. I will tell you that quote by Norman Cousins, "Laughter serves as a blocking agent." If you haven't read The Anatomy of an Illness by Norman Cousins, Cousins was the editor of Atlantic or Harper's at one time, one of those magazines. And he ended up at a hospital in Boston. Anyway, he ended up in a hospital in Boston and had degeneration of the spine. And they told him, he was a tennis player and a professor and so forth, a writer, but they told him within 6 months he would be unable to walk for the rest of his life. He decided the only thing he was getting in the hospital was pain medicine and getting woke up every few hours to get it, and bad food. And fortunately he had enough money. He told his doctor, "I'm going to check into the hotel across the street. You can come over there and check on me. I'm going to be over there." And he ordered Marx Brothers movies and he found out that watching Marx Brothers, that a half hour of uncontrolled laughter gave him 4 hours of good sleep. And within a few months, he was back playing tennis. And he ended up, eventually the cancer did get him, but he said he was healed by laughing. And Norman Cousins was not some kind of quack. He was a very intellectual person, but found that the Marx Brothers healed him more than the medicine in the hospital. Okie doke. This is one of my favorite, Sisyphus, the myth of Sisyphus. He was cursed to spend the rest of his life pushing a stone up the hill and would always roll back down. Had he done it this days, he might have sit in and taken his picture. And during the pandemic, Sisyphus worked from home. Next. This one says, "I miss indoor dining." I want to tell you, this is a first world problem, really. Think about it. This is a first world problem. I miss indoor dining. I finally went back to my office at Nick's English Hut in Bloomington last week for the first time in a year. And nobody sat in my booth that I've been using for 40 years. Nobody sat in it for a year. Even when they opened back up, they blocked that booth off to keep spacing, and so the only person that sat in that booth is mine. If you ever go to Bloomington and want to sit in my official office booth, go in and there's a Poindexter Street sign hanging above it, and you can sit in my booth. Okey-doke, next. The mind-body problem. A lot of us have this problem. Get up. No. Next. What's it going to be? I'm still thinking. Burning fire pits or never-ending Zoom meeting? I can tell you right now, fire seems desirable for me. I have found no style of working more exhausting than Zoom meetings. Some people love them, and I don't understand it, but I accept it, and it works, and I have to do it several times a week now, and I would choose a fire pit any day. Next. This one says, what if I told you that the thing you've been chasing your whole life has been a part of you all along? How many times are we chasing something that we already have? The dogs are some of the best people on the planet. This one says, have you considered the possibility that laughter is just a defense mechanism? Next. No, I think I liked it better over there. This is one of those springtime things that happens, you move furniture. I have to tell you, moving furniture can be it can be obsessive. I had a sister my family was 3 sets of twins and 3 singles. You have that many kids, some of them are going to be very weird. And one of my sisters was very, very weird. She got married in 1957. And her husband at that time was working with 2 of my brothers building I-69 up around Gas City at that time. In 1957 is when they started that interstate. And he would come home to Ragglesville, Indiana on the weekend, spend a weekend, and Kate wanted to move furniture every Saturday. And so they'd rearrange their house every Saturday. And this went on for more than 50 years, even after they lived together. My twin brother went by to see Kate one morning. This has been maybe 5, 6, probably 8 or 9 years ago. She's dead now, and she wouldn't mind me laughing at her anyway. But see, Daryl went by to see Kate and Lloyd. They lived close together, and my twin brother dropped in, and Kate was crying, and Lloyd wasn't home. And Daryl said, "What's the matter, Kate?" She said, "Lloyd told me no today for the first time since we were married. Over 50 years. It didn't take me that long to say no about some things. But he said, "Well, what did he say no about?" She said, "I wanted to move furniture today, and he refused to do it for the first time." Every weekend for 50-some years, she moved furniture. And Daryl said, and she said, "Will you help me move furniture?" And Daryl said, "I'd have told you no 50 years ago." So Kate had to live the rest. I think Lloyd never moved furniture again. Next. There he goes again. What on earth does he do with it all? Next. Wait. What did I come up here to do? Boy, you know this one. The best thing about getting a little older in your life, and Glenda insists that I don't call myself an old man, although I feel kind of old sometimes. The best thing about Easter for old people is you can hide your own eggs. By the time you go back in the house, you will never find another egg. And every day you'll find one that will surprise you all over again. You'll forget where you put them. I forgot my phone this morning, or yesterday. We laid down to take a nap, and we turn our phones off when we take our naps, obviously. And I'd stuck mine under my pillow because Glenda had brought it into me because I had forgotten to turn it off, and I turned it off, stuck it in the pillow. And then later, yesterday evening, I went into Juniper Gallery and Spencer to use their Wi-Fi, and got back home, couldn't find my phone. I jumped back in the car and went back to Juniper. I thought maybe I dropped it in there, and came back home, searching all over, and finally, 2 hours later, I finally remembered that it was on my pillow. So this is part of what we do. We go up to howl at moons and then forget why we're there. Next. I believe it was Maupassant who wrote the sweet and fleeting thoughts singing in our souls as we idle along nature's path. The guy says, "Just go already. Just go already." And he said unto them, "Bad dogs, no, hellfire and Dalmatians." Now some of you know, most of you know, I started my preaching life preaching hellfire and damnation in tent meetings when I was 15 years old. I would much rather be able to look back and say I preached about hellfire and Dalmatians. Next. 2 stupid chickens. How do I get to the other side? You are on the other side. And if you ever did catch your tail, are you sure it would make you happy? There's more to that than it appears. I remember when I decided years ago, Glenda and I decided to change our lifestyle and spend more time with our kids. And I decided I really couldn't be a full-time parent and a full-time minister at that time. I appreciate those who can, but I couldn't, and decided to leave the ministry and kind of drop out of life in order to be a full-time parent. And a man who was worth several $1 million came into my office in the last week at St. Joe, Missouri, at First Christian Church. And he said, "I just want you to know I respect what you're doing." He said, "I wish I had done this." He said, "I'm worth several $1 million now, but I don't know my children." He said, they come by on holidays and stuff like that, but I really don't know my children. And I would give all my millions to know my children. So I was lucky that Glenda and I made that decision, but I often wonder how many people spend their lives chasing something that when they find it does not bring the benefit that they ask for. Think about what you're chasing in your life. Think about it. Next. Oh, this is a beautiful one. Beep, beep, honk, honk. He's drawing. Such a ridiculous requirement. Draw a bridge ahead. You know, I read the other day the difference between a literalist and a kleptomaniac. A literalist takes things literally. A kleptomaniac takes things literally. Next. I thought I was a writer, but it turned out to be a chemical imbalance. I've thought that myself at times. I won't comment any further. Next. Republican Party peanuts. Charlie Brown, the only reason we keep losing is because the other team scores more home runs than so all we need to do is to make it illegal for the other team to go near home base. Also, we should appoint a scorekeeper who would declare our team the winner no matter what. Now, if you've been watching the news, that's exactly what they've done in Georgia. It's exactly what they've done in Georgia. And they passed that bill in one day. The House passed it in the morning, the Senate passed it in the afternoon, and the governor signed it in the evening. Have you ever heard of any legislature in this country passing a bill in one day? And then they arrested the Democratic representative who wanted to ask a question at the door. This is what we're dealing with. And I don't care what party did it. When we care more about our Second Amendment guns than our constitutional right to vote, we're in serious trouble as a nation. And we need to remember that. Next, you'll like this one. It's a wine store. It's made from anti-diuretic hybrid grape and reduces the number of times people your age have to go to the toilet during the night. It's called Pinot Noir. I don't even want to talk about that. Go. I don't like wine anyway too much. It gives me headaches, but I wish they made scotch out of that kind of stuff. And to think we started as a book group. This has to be a Unitarian Universalist book group. Be careful what books you read as a book group. You never know what car you're going to end up in. Next. This week, on the amazing race to enlightenment, can Jim and Susie achieve right mindfulness? And will Barb and Candy be eliminated for relentless clinging to the self? That's a reality show for somebody. Next. I wish I'd known this is what they meant by conjugal visit. Amo, amas, amat. I want to take this one into the prisons, but I doubt if they'll let me. Do it again. Okay, the guy on the bed says, gave cold water to a voter. You? I tell you what, I intend, there has been people already, lawyers already said that anyone who gets arrested in Georgia for giving water to a voter, they'll represent for free. So if it becomes necessary, I may make a trip to Georgia. And certainly if the Indiana legislature ever passes the kind of bill that they have passed in Georgia, we'll be raising money for bail. Next. This is a soul sorting center. Buddhist, recyclable. Hindu, recyclable. Lutheran, non-recyclable. Krishna, yep. Catholic, nope. Agnostic, flip a coin. So take your pick. This is a little more serious. Now with an extended magazine. Prayers and thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. This is not a political issue, it's a moral issue. This is about whether or not people love their children as much as they love their guns. I don't care what anybody says. This is not a hunting weapon. This is not a hunting weapon. I may have told you before, my pappy, when we were young, we moved out to an 80-acre farm over in east of Farland, Indiana, next to the Crane Naval Weapons Base. And we had deer all over the place in those days. Pappy wouldn't hunt them. He loved to watch the deer. And then one year we came, we'd come home sometimes to see 20 deer in our fields. We had about 3 fields that we grew soybeans in, and the rest of our place was a wooded area. But every year we'd have custom farmers come by. You know how they used to do. They travel around with it. Every farmer didn't have their own combine in those days. They had people who came around to combine your beans for you. And the guy pulled in to combine our beans that year, and he came back down to the house and told Pappy, he said, there's not enough beans in there, on that field to pay me. And so Pappy said, well, we're going to start eating deer meat. And Pappy had never been a hunter, but every year Pappy took one gun, one shot. Every year he got 2 deer every winter. He shot a gun twice a year. He didn't have to go out and shoot 150,000 gun shots a weekend. He didn't have to spend hundreds of dollars on ammunition to be a good marksman. He went out and shot 1 deer one night, and usually 1 deer the evening, and usually the second deer the second evening. It's the only time he ever shot a gun. When he gave me a gun when I was 11 or 12 years old, he said, this is a tool, it's not a toy, and if I ever find you playing with it, I'll take it away. Guns are not to play with, and these are not hunting guns. They are made to kill as quickly as possible, and they need to be banned. And those who say it won't make a difference, ask Australia. They had 1 mass killing, they banned them, they haven't had a mass killing since. And those who say we can't do this, ask Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan banned these, and killings went down 63%. It works. And the Australians are really no different than the Americans. We're all human beings. And the only people who celebrate these guns are the blood merchants making money off of them. And it's the only industry in America that cannot be sued for their product. The only industry of America in America cannot be sued because Congress has given them immunity. So now here's one of my favorites I've seen in a long time. There are times when things are so crazy that the end is near seems optimistic. I can say that, I hope. I'm fully vaccinated, my wife and I. How many in here are fully vaccinated so far? Quite a few. I know some people are choosing not to get vaccinated. I tend to believe the scientist. I don't think it's a conspiracy to put 5G in our heads or anything like that. I tend to believe our scientists and the people who spent their lives. I had a good friend send me a video file about a doctor saying this is all a conspiracy. And I looked up the doctor, and the file, the channel on which it was broadcast over the internet, and the channel was owned completely by the John Birch Society. And I wrote the person and said, I do not go to a proctologist to find out about my brain injury, and I don't go to a orthopedic doctor who's this person to find out about epidemics. So there's a lot of conspiracy stuff going on out there. I encourage people to get the vaccine because I think that way we will eventually reach herd immunity. And of course, I was accused of being a little more emotional about this because my sister was the first one to die of COVID in Davis County, Indiana. But I am emotional about it, not simply because Ginger died, but because over 300, almost 400,000 people have died in the United States alone. What do we got? We got any more? Well, that's the end of that show. I encourage you to laugh. find a reason to laugh. I mean, it's not hard, really. I can watch Tucker Carlson and laugh. I really can, you know. I just like to watch his face sometimes, and it makes me laugh. I think sometimes I consider myself a progressive and liberal, but I think sometimes we take ourselves a little too seriously, and we need to laugh. We need to laugh about religion. We need to laugh about politics. We need to laugh about our lives. And if you're not getting enough laughter, well, what can I say? Read Joe Heller's Catch-22 for the first time if you haven't read it yet. If that doesn't make you laugh, it's a great anti-war book, but it's one of the funniest books ever written, named one of the 10 best books of the 20th century by the American Literary Society. Read that. Catch-22 by Joe Heller, yeah. And thinking about what that whole thing about chasing something and finding out, you know, you've had it all along, or it turned out not as good as you thought it would. Joe Heller and Kurt Vonnegut, one of my patron saints, was invited to a dinner at a billionaire's island off the coast of New York. When Joe Heller died, Kurt wrote the New York Times letter saying, "We went to this billionaire's dinner and we were the authors. We were at the end of this long table. All the superstars were up front." And he turned to Joe and said, "Joe, how's it make you feel that the guy at the head of this table made more money in 1 hour today than Catch-22 has made you in all of its editions?" And there were many. Joe turned to Kurt and said, "I've got something he ain't got." Kurt said, "What the hell could that be?" He said, "The knowledge that I have enough." The dog chasing its tail never gets enough. And we can chase a lot of things in life and never get enough. But you can never, in a real sense, one thing you really can't get enough of is laughter. So laugh as much as you can. Find reasons to laugh, because it'll heal your soul. And in a real sense, it heals people all the time. Going back to my opening statement about funerals, memorial services, that's what resurrection is. That's what resurrection is that when someone you love has gone and they come back to you in laughter, that's resurrection. And I suspect the disciples laughed. They had to hide out because it was going to be illegal for them to be who they were pretty soon. But I guarantee you they got together and laughed. Maybe they had a little wine to help them, but they laughed. Because laughter is one of the great human medicines that all of us can find if we look for it. And if we are not chasing something else, perfection, if we're not chasing something else, hatred, even in the midst of Auschwitz, they danced, they sang, and they laughed. And I suspect that was true in the 1940s when it was going on. People found reason to laugh before they died. I encourage you to do the same. And if you do, I think you will really discover the meaning of Easter, because you can't help but laugh when you realize the winter's over. You know, I don't have to worry too much about my firewood supply till next year. And when the flowers start coming up and the birds start nesting, even when the other bird says, "I liked it better over there," we got to laugh. I encourage you to do so. Our closing hymn is "A Day of Light and Gladness," number 270.
And
closing words found in the back, number 636. Our source of peace leads us to peace, a peace profound and true. Lead us to healing, to mastery of all that drives us to war within ourselves and others. May our deeds inscribe in us in the book of life and blessing and righteousness and peace. O source of peace, bless us with peace. Our congregational benediction.
May the blessings of love rest upon you. May peace abide with you. May God's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore.
May you go in peace. May you know that you are loved and that your life is sacred.